Good morning. This morning I'm going to do some baking for Isaiah House lemonade stands that's this weekend. The first thing I'm going to do is make 1 hour cinnamon rolls. An easy recipe that you start out with rapid rise yeast. And what I have done is put 1 cup of warm milk in a microwave safe cup, added the 2 packages of yeast, the 1 cup of milk, and 1 tablespoon of sugar. I microwaved it, and you'll want to do that a little bit at a time so that you get exactly the right temperature. The milk should be, for a rapid rise yeast, between 120 degrees and 130 degrees. It can be anywhere in those degrees. You do not want the milk to get over 140 degrees because then it will not rise. It will kill the yeast. So we're going to leave that sit for about 5 minutes and let it get nice and foamy. And while we're doing that, we're going to mix up the dry ingredients for the cinnamon rolls. So we are going to start with 3 cups of flour. And I have my flour right here. And it doesn't really have to be an exact measurement for this because you can add a little bit more or a little bit as you need. But we're going to start out with 3 cups. Just shake it off a little bit, and you can see the cups. It doesn't have to be flat measured, just into the bowl. And 1 more. There we go. And the recipe calls for a 1/2 cup of sugar less the 1 tablespoon that I took out to put in with the yeast. And look at that yeast. See how that's bubbling and foaming? That is just absolutely perfect how you want it to be. We're going to add the sugar. And we also want to add salt. And the recipe calls, let me double check, the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of salt. So here we have our salt. I'm going to add that right in. Just shake it in there. Perfect. Okay. And we're going to mix that in the mixer just a little bit, just to mix those dry ingredients together. This was a recipe that I actually got from my sister that she found online, and it's so easy because it only takes an hour and you have delicious cinnamon rolls. Okay, I also have, I've got my egg. We're going to do 1 egg. We're going to do 1/3 cup of granola oil, and we're going to give this yeast just another minute just so it gets nice and foamy. While we're waiting, let's go ahead and mix up the filling. So I have 1/3 a cup of butter. It's very soft, as you can see. It's nice and soft because we're going to want it to spread. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And you'll note that this is a bulk container of cinnamon. I buy most of my spices at the Amish stores. And because it's so much cheaper. If you buy a little package of cinnamon at the store, it's going to cost you 3 times more than it does at the Amish store. So 2 nice teaspoons of cinnamon. We also need to add a whole cup of brown sugar. I'm going to show you a little trick. I keep my brown sugar in an airtight container because you want it to be soft when you get ready to use it. I'm going to put the cup right inside the container and get down there and fill up my cup. And see how I'm using the side of the container to press it down? Side of the package. It's so much nicer. You don't have to get your hands sticky from the brown sugar, and you can press it right into the container and get it nice and smooth. Well, I did get a little on my hand, but not very much. So we're going to put that right in here. And we'll mix that up, and then this will be ready when we get the cinnamon rolls mixed up, which really does not take very long. Oh, and look at that. Can you see that yeast? That is just beautiful. See, since the butter was nice and soft, that is just mixing in so easily. I actually let the butter sit out for about 3 hours. Won't hurt it. Won't hurt to be at that room temperature. There's some discussion about whether butter should be left out on the counter, but I've never had it spoil. It just keeps just fine. Okay, so we'll put that to the side, and I think we are ready to add our yeast. I'm going to push this out just a little more. And look how beautiful that looks. It is actually raised like 3 times bigger than the 1 cup. And in it goes. Scrape all that goodness into the bowl. And we're going to add 1 egg. It's always a good idea to put your egg in a bowl. And I just use the same bowl that I have my sugar in. And that way you can make sure that you don't get any eggshells in there. In it goes. And then we have 1/3 cup of canola oil. And we'll just scrape that out a little. And we're going to start mixing. I hope the mixer's not too noisy for you. We're going to start on low so your dry ingredients don't fly out. You see that mixing up in there? Okay. So once it's mixed, we're going to turn it off and scrape down the sides so that everything gets mixed up really well. Okay. And now we're going to turn it up. So we're going to keep this going for about 5 minutes. So I am going to pause the video just for a few minutes, and then when we're almost done, we'll come back and review. Okay, we are back, and our dough has been mixing for 5 minutes. It's really done. It looks perfect. I did add about 2 tablespoons more of flour just to give it a little less tackiness. But see how nice and rubbery and smooth that dough is? That is going to give us a perfect yeast bread. So we're going to take this down, and we're ready to roll out the cinnamon rolls. See, look how nice and elastic that is. That is exactly what you need for yeast dough. You want to have that elastic, and it's got a little bit of stickiness, but it doesn't really stick to my fingers. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to put some flour out on the countertop. It's not going to take a lot. We'll spread that out. Okay. And we'll put the dough right on the counter. And it smells so good. I love the smell of yeast. Yeast dough just has beautiful smell. Get all that goodness out of the mixing bowl. And give it a little bit of a shape. And then we'll use the rolling pin. A little bit of flour. That'll keep the rolling pin from sticking. And look at that dough. That is just perfect. See, it has that elastic. And let me just double check. I think we need to roll this to 18 by 24. So it's going to be a little bit longer, and it is wide. I am going to turn this just to be sure that we're not sticking. Yeah, there is a little bit. That's okay. We are good. Bit of flour. Turn it one more time. Here we go. I also have the oven preheating to 375, and I've already prepared my pan. I did that while we were off. Got a nice big cookie sheet with parchment paper. We are about there. It doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle, but it's pretty close. And now we're going to spread on our filling that we made up a little earlier. So we will just sprinkle that on there. Spread that out. Okay. Now, we are going to roll it with the long edge. And see how easy that rolls? We did have a little bit of sticking on the counter, but not very much. And it is rolling up just perfectly. Nice, nice. We'll get our pan. And we're going to cut these to about 1.5 inches. I've got a little bit of a serrated knife and just barely saw that so you don't smash the dough. You want it to stay nice and round. Look at all that filling. If they do get smashed, you can just shape them a little bit so they're nice and round. Little beep. The oven's hot, but these are going to need to sit and rest. The dough is just going to rest before it goes in the oven for about 5 5 to 10 minutes. It won't hurt if it rests a little bit longer than 5 minutes. So whatever, you can get your counter cleaned off and while the dough is resting. And we'll talk a little bit about the icing. It has a yummy, yummy cream cheese icing. I am going to put a towel down just so the pan does not get flour on it. And they are ready to rest. The cinnamon rolls are done and they turned out beautiful, just golden brown. Now we're going to make the icing. In the mixer I have 2 ounces of cream cheese softened and 1/4 cup of butter softened, and I'm going to mix that just a little bit. And while that's mixing, I'm going to add in some liquid. We need 1 teaspoon of vanilla, half a tablespoon of corn syrup, and that corn syrup is going to give it a shiny, very pretty color for the icing. Cream cheese, of course, will give it a great flavor. I'm going to also add a half a tablespoon of lemon juice. When that is mixed up, then I'm going to add in, I've already measured 1 1/4 cups of powdered sugar. And we will give that a nice mix. And then we'll be ready to ice. So the recipe says, we'll follow the recipe, to put half of the frosting on the rolls while they're nice and hot, and then we're going to let them cool and covered with the rest of the icing. I think the icing is probably mixed up well enough. We're going to turn it off, and we're going to add half of the icing. Nice and creamy and smooth, and that is going to melt right down in to the cinnamon rolls, make them soft, sweet, and yummy. And when these are cool and the icing is finished, I will package these up and they will go to Isaiah House for the lemonade stand. Hope to see you there.